Welcome back, Ascenders, to the Ascended Thoughts Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Crane. So this is a love letter. This is a love letter from me to you. And it is a love letter that is written with love. And it just has a reminder in it. I want to write you a letter that has a reminder in it because I don't know how often you hear this or whether or not you've ever heard it at all. But I do think that it is capable of changing the trajectory of your life. And that reminder is it's you against you. And it has always been you against you. And it should not be that way. It should be, it is you with you. A lot of people will say, I don't compete with anybody other than myself. Stop doing that. Stop competing with yourself. Don't compete with other people and don't compete with yourself. You don't need to compete with yourself. You are the universe. Why would you compete with a force that great? What you want to do is work with yourself. You are the universe. You are the spirit and you are the law. And there's nothing that you have to prove and there's nothing that you have to compete with yourself or with anyone for. If you want it, you can have it. It's that simple. If you want it, it's yours. It's that simple. If you want it, it's immediately manifested. It's that simple. It's just your job to see it and then work with it. And when you see it, you see you. When you choose to work with it, you have chosen to work with yourself. And when you can recognize that you, the universe, are working with you, the universe, there is no one else that is more powerful than you at that moment. And there's nothing that you cannot do or not accomplish or not experience. Stop fighting with yourself. Stop arguing with yourself. Stop hating yourself. Stop telling yourself that you're not worthy. Stop telling yourself that you don't deserve it. Stop telling yourself that you're not lovable. Stop telling yourself that you'll never be loved. Stop telling yourself that you can't have it. Stop telling yourself that you can't do it. Stop telling yourself everything that's not positive because it's untrue. You have been pursuing a life that's false. You have been pursuing an ideology that's false. You have been telling yourself and convincing yourself of things that you cannot have, do, achieve, experience, and all of that is false. You have been telling yourself that you will never have a loving family or a loving relationship, and that is false. You've been telling yourself that you'll never be successful, and that is false. You have been living a life of lie after lie after lie, and it's not your fault. Because you, like the rest of us, is a product of our upbringing and a product of our environment. And when you are surrounded by people who are also living a life of lies, who are also living a life in falsehood, and they have convinced themselves that their misery is the truth, then it's only natural for you to experience the same thing. I'm not saying that there is not an experience of misery. But I am saying that you have the power to change that experience. And you change that experience by invalidating it, by choosing for it to no longer be true, by deciding that it is a falsehood that no longer resonates for you or with you, that no longer works for you or with you. That you no longer want it in your reality and that you no longer want to experience it. And here's the thing. There was nothing wrong with the experience because it's through the experience of misery that you can now really grow to appreciate the experience of love, of fulfillment, of satisfaction, of prosperity. It's through the experience of misery that you can now see the opposite side of the spectrum. There is nothing wrong with your previous experiences of maybe feeling like you were less than prosperous, of maybe experiencing what it was like to not be loved. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can choose to now choose the experience of love, to choose the experience of prosperity. And through your experience of not having, you now know what it would feel like to have. You no longer need to be a victim in your own hero story, to be a martyr in your own story. You don't need to do that anymore. You can choose something else, and you can choose something different. You can choose to live a life that may look different than everybody that's currently around you. You can choose to pursue your happiness even though everybody is actively pursuing and then double downing on their misery. That's not your problem. You can choose to pursue your fulfillment and your happiness and satisfaction even though everybody else works overtime to be unhappy. That's not your problem. You can pursue to choose your own greatest expression and to live in your own greatest expression. And you can choose to experience where life will take you by you making that decision. Even though people around you may chosen to have lived a life that is not for them, but that's not your problem. You can choose that career path. You can choose that wealth. You can choose that house. You can choose that family. You can choose that love. You can choose that experience, even though everyone around you has not chosen it for themselves, but that's not your problem. You can choose to feel prosperous, even though everybody else feels poor. That's not your problem. You can choose success, even though people around you feel like failure. That's not your problem. You can choose to be in loving, caring, giving relationships, even though everybody around you is convinced that everyone lies, that everyone steals, that everyone cheats, that everyone will cause them pain. That's not your problem. You can choose to be different. You can choose to live life differently. And if you make this decision, you will be backed up. The universe will have your back because you are the universe. And why would you not have your own back? You are the creator that creates all things. You are the thing that has created all things. And you now know that that is what you are. You know that you are the spirit, and you know that you are the law. And because you know that, you can use it to your advantage. Because why would you not use yourself to your own advantage? People around you do not know that they are the spirit. They do not know that they are the law. But that's not your problem. It is not your job to save others. The best that you can do is guide if they're willing. But if they go left when you told them to go right, that is not your problem. Your job is not to be a savior. The only way someone can be saved is if they choose to save themselves. If you keep putting yourself in the middle of somebody else's harm's way, even though they keep choosing harm's way, the only person that gets hurt in that scenario is you. Everyone has a responsibility of remembering that they are spirit and that they are law. It doesn't matter how many times you say it. It does not matter how many times you tell them. It will either resonate or it won't. If it resonates, they are ready. And if it doesn't resonate with them, then they are not. And that's not your problem. Just like me sharing this information with you now will either resonate with you or it won't. But if it doesn't, guess what? That's not my problem. I can give you the keys to the city, but if you don't put the keys in the door, that's not my problem. You are here to experience your greatest expression, not the greatest expression of somebody else. And you cannot do that by living for somebody else, by living with and editing your behavior, your pursuits, your ideas, and your thoughts because of somebody else's ignorant judgment, for somebody else's lack of information, for somebody else's pain that they carry due to being unresolved within themselves. You should not live a life because somebody else has chosen not to live theirs. Someone else's choice to be a passive participant in the active game of life is not your problem. Somebody else's anger at you for choosing your life is not your problem. Somebody else's jealousy aimed at you for your happiness, for your satisfaction and your fulfillment is not your problem. Somebody else's envy that is directed towards you, even though they can do what you're doing, but they have chosen not to, is not your problem. Stop tuning into other people's issues when those people have no desire to fix their issues. You sit here and you ask yourself, or you tell yourself, it'll get better. Maybe if I try to talk to that person one more time, maybe one more conversation, maybe one more Christmas dinner, I can get them to understand me. You cannot get someone to understand you when that person refuses to understand themselves. It's not your problem. Well, what if they kick me out? What if I'm ostracized by a community who are miserable, who make you unhappy, who make you feel judged, who make you feel misunderstood, who make you feel inferior? Why would you make that your problem? It was never your objective to be concerned with other people were doing, with what other people thought. That was never your concern. Your objective was, and always was, to pursue your greatest expression. You have gone on a detour because you have been concerned with somebody else and their choice to not pursue their greatest expression. You have been concerned with the community of people who have chosen to not pursue their greatest expression. Maybe a friend group, maybe family, but that's not your problem. When you make the decision to choose you, everything you will need will fall into place. You will be resourced. It will fall into place. You will be taken care of. It will fall into place because you are the thing that has created all things. And you've got your back. You'll back yourself up. The universe will take care of you. That divine intelligence, the higher self, whatever you want to call it, God, will take care of you because that is you. There isn't a reality that exists where you don't take care of yourself. Even in your darkest of times, when you felt like you were on your hands and knees, when you felt like you needed somebody and nobody was there, you still took care of yourself, didn't you? What could that look like while you were actively pursuing your greatest expression? Because at that time you weren't, and you still took care of yourself. So if you were in the energy of pursuing your greatest expression and taking care of yourself at the same time, what would that look like? You are spirit. You are big. You are bigger than that box that you have stuffed yourself into. Even though the people around you have stuffed themselves into boxes, that's not your problem. What you are supposed to experience in life will inherently be big because you are spirit and you are law. You are the creator of all things. There's nothing modest about that. And it's natural that you would not live a modest life because how does the creator of all things live a modest life? Just because the people around you want you to be modest because you being great triggers them, that's not your problem. You are meant to live a life that is great to you. You are meant to live a life that is meaningful to you. And you incarnated in order to do those things. You were excited about it before your incarnation. You were excited to pursue the things that you love, that you were inspired by. You were excited to experience passion, love, and joy. You owe it to yourself to fulfill why you chose to incarnate. You owe it to yourself to live a full and fulfilling life. You owe it to yourself to reach the end of the journey and to say, wow, yeah, that was nice.